Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
Hey now! Welcome to episode 8 of the Batman on Film satellite show. Because, Pete, it's episode 8 of the satellite show. BOF senior contributor Peter Verra with his Peter Tingle.
Yeah,
we'll get into it. That's a good setup. That's a good setup. Is Peter Tingle. When was the last time you and I did a show together, dude? It's been a hot minute.
The Batman Returns commentary.
That's
what it was.
I don't know. Was it really? Did we really do that?
Yeah.
I thought you were trolling.
No, we really did that. It was me, you, Chris Clow, and Haas.
All right. So by the way, guys, so listen, welcome to episode 8. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. This is a 2-part show. I mean, it's one show, but Pete and I are actually, so Ryan Haas, my co-host on Sheriff Haas, as we should say. He and I are co-hosting this thing together. Of course, Team BOF can jump in anytime and host one of these. In fact, Ryan Lowry did his first of 4 Toy Story shows, and I gotta admit, man, first of all, I love Ryan. He's really, really talented. But that Toy Story episode with he and Haas was delightful, dude. Did you listen to it?
I did not listen to it. I didn't know Toy Story was this popular.
Well, just glad you confess that you don't support your fellow BOF brothers. That's
It's not true. There's a lot. If I'm not listening to a podcast, I'm watching one of the millions of DC shows to talk about them on somebody's show.
How many podcasts are you doing right now, dude? It's a little ridiculous.
I'm on your show right now.
I mean, trying to book you, I might as well try to book Michael Keaton. I mean,
I have my own show.
Ever since you did that interview with Uslan, dude, you've been like, I
got my Spider-Man show, and then
I got
the BOF show that I do with Garrett. Every once in a while, I pop up there. Monthly, I'm on the Batman Book Club, so I'm all over the internet. I'm all over making rounds.
You are, and I really, I like this current incarnation of BOF. I mean, Bill obviously is always at the helm, and that is at the heart of this whole thing. It's him, but I like that it's there's a lot of little tentacles out there, right? All these different talented people, their own unique talents and skills and knowledge base of pop culture are doing their own thing to contribute to the site. It makes it more versatile. It makes it better. And that's kind of the longevity of BOF is continuing to make it better. It's not a knock on anybody, including myself. It's not that. It's just, I don't think the site's ever been better. I mean that, especially because we're going right into the genesis of this whole site in the first place, which is a solo Batman film. Anyway, so here's the episode today, guys. Pete and I are going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home because Ryan and I want to kind of end the year with our Matrix trilogy chat. So Chris Clow and he and I kind of launched this thing a couple months ago. We talked about the first Matrix and just sort of the impact it had. And Scott Mendelson from Forbes magazine, he and I took a nosedive into the sequels, amongst other things. It's a great chat. Thank you, Scott. And so we're going to wrap it up in this episode with bring Chris Clow back in, and me and Ryan and him are going to talk about the new Matrix. I just want to say up front, I love it. I bombed at the box office. I don't get it. And I don't understand the backlash. I guess this reminds me of really just the other Matrix sequels, but I think this is as close to amazing as the first film, and I'll die on that hill. But anyway, moving on from that. But Pete's here joining me on the satellite show.
Yeah, baby.
He's slumming it. To talk about Spider-Man. And by the way, let me just say this: the show that you do with Nico and his dad, those guys seem so great, dude.
They're amazing.
I like those guys a lot.
I'm very fortunate to have them. And for them to be co-hosts of mine. They're a dynamic duo.
Well, they're passionate fans. They're smart. They're interesting. They're old rock and rollers, which is cool.
Yeah, you'd like them.
No, they seem great. I'm a big fan. Seem like really good guys too. That's the whole thing. But Pete, having you on the show, this episode, shouldn't say the show because the show is as much yours as mine. In fact, more, you're the senior contributor these days. I'm just
I
Dick
guess so.
Shoes.
I'm the new Dick Shoes. You're the old Dick Shoes and the new Dick Shoes.
Admittedly, you're a far bigger Spider-Man fan than I am, although he's one of my top 5 favorite comic book characters of all time. And I've always had respectful disagreements with you in terms of this current Tom Holland MCU incarnation of Spider-Man.
Well, as have most people.
No, as a most comic book fans on Twitter, which is not real life. But anyway, moving on. Nothing. You're just gonna sit there and just take that one. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's the truth. Like, it's just ever like, this.
There's a generation of fans, but it's a good. Actually, this is a good time. Is that I understand your issues with it. I understand where's Uncle Ben. He's this whole thing with Tony Stark, and he's got his suit that's $40 billion, and he's kind of in the Avengers. He's not your neighborhood Spider-Man. He's going over to Europe. I get all that. I would just argue that, hey man, we've had 5 films previously where he was the trusted, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man from Queens and not a part of that universe. And since that was so hot, the MCU was just rocking. To bring Spider-Man in and to bring such a dynamic young actor to do it and to make the character so much fun and to introduce him to a whole new array of fans, I thought was great. And what Spidey on film probably needed at the time. But I think that with No Way Home, I want to open up the discussion with this. First of all, I love this movie. I've seen it twice. And in full disclosure, I really kind of love all the Spider-Man films. I watched Spider-Man 3 today. It was the last one that me and my daughters didn't revisit. We watched the 2 Andrew Garfield. We watched the first 2 Raimi, Tobey Maguire films, and we watched Homecoming and Far From Home. Anyway, we love them. For some reason, I just kind of skipped Spider-Man 3, watched that today, and I was like, man, you know what? This film kind of falls apart.
Better,
it's
right?
aged better because expectations aren't there. And kind of the same way with the Andrew Garfield films. I watched those 2 now.
The first one's way better than the second.
It is, but
the second one's a mess.
I enjoy even the second one. But now that the smoke is clear and we have now this trilogy with Tom Holland, what are your thoughts of this movie?
I really did. Rick's alluded to this. I'm not the biggest fan of the MCU Spider-Man. There's some things I think creatively that by the end of this movie they've dug their heels in and they've made firm decisions that so and so will not be represented in such way. But overall, this movie, as a Spider-Man fan and someone who is a decent enough Garfield fan, I really do like Amazing One a lot, and a big Raimi fanatic. I do love the 3 of those movies. Those 3 Raimi movies. Is say what you want about the third one. I think it's a lot better than even most superhero movies today. So, and then you combine that with their big entrance, it kind of blows your mind. As obviously this is spoiler filled. So
at this point it's fair game, man. The cast is openly discussing. Yeah,
it blows your mind as a fan that hey, look, this is a hell of an achievement, as especially for fandom, because this isn't supposed to happen and it's not supposed to be this good. And say what you want, like, I know Rick, you said you had problems with the first 30 minutes. Like, this is the first MCU Spider-Man since Homecoming. Well, his first appearance where I was just like captivated by it, like beginning to end. Like Far From Home, it just didn't work for me. Like, it just, him being in Paris and all that stuff, and it felt too dumbed down. But this felt really like respectful, and I don't know, like, there's not many things you can say. It's a solid action movie. All the villains look cool. It was great to see everyone come back. It was great to see Jamie Foxx get some redemption. Melina was great. I thought it was pretty ingenious how they went from Melina kind of being a threat to him being controlled with the Stark tech. I thought that was interesting. One thing that really kind of bugged me though for the movie is like, it was weird how like there's no Osborns. I thought that was a big issue for me.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. There is no Osborns, but again,
because he says it at the table, he's like, and this is like Osborn himself. He says Oscorp doesn't exist, and someone else is living in my house. So it's like, oh wow, that's an interesting. there are two like firm, like I said, decisions Marvel's made, and it was one, there was no Oscorp, there's no Osborns, and two was like this version of Uncle Ben just doesn't really exist.
Well, but here's the
So
thing:
therefore, people have to get over
do we
it,
need the
and they
do we,
turn Aunt May into Uncle Ben.
yeah, but do we need the Osborns in this?
Yeah, yes, you do 100%.
No, but
yes, you do.
But you don't.
need the Osborns.
But you don't. That's your comic book. Like
Amazing Spider-Man 2 ruined the Osborns. That was a problem there
No.
too. Like,
but like
you have this.
That's your
version
toxic
of
absolutism, my
Defoe.
friend.
Well,
You
that's
don't
not
need-
toxic.
Just
That's
kidding.
like saying, does
I'm
Batman need
kidding.
the Joker? It's the Green Goblin. It's Norman Osborn. You need Norman.
But
At some point, he needs to find his own Green Goblin,
but-
and this is a good stopgap until now, because it was great to see Defoe back, and he was.
He doesn't need, but he doesn't need his own. He doesn't need Uncle Ben either. And the reason he doesn't, especially now, is
You
because
can say Uncle Ben because you have Aunt May, and the character serves the same purpose, and it's like, okay, I understand what you're trying to do. I don't really like it, but I get it. But to not have not to have a Green Goblin,
but he does. He fought him. I mean, tooth and nail, dude.
I know. I get.
Listen, some of the best fight
interesting
sequences I've ever
layout.
seen in a Spider-Man film.
Layout. I don't know if I necessarily
that last scene with the two of them, and then Tobey Maguire comes over and
I love how it's Toby who's the one who comes up and says, "Hey, look, we don't do that." Yeah, like
correct. Now listen, that's the point.
Those two issues are like that's it. Those are my only two.
But they're not issues. They're self-created issues.
They're my issues. They're my issues.
I know, but I love you. I'm just trying to help you out here.
But there's great movie. Like the meme moment is great.
But
I love it when he calls them amazing. I love it when they're talking about the organic.
Time.
Like, but I also love the whole half hour before that, where like I've never really enjoyed all this Marvel-y stuff in a Spider-Man film until this movie. And I don't know what it was about. Maybe it was like I kind of appreciate Doctor Strange more in cameo status than I do anything else.
Sure.
Because I don't like his full length movie. I don't know, but I like him
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Of course, I like him
more in the cameo stuff.
Yeah, he's great. But I want to go back to the Osborn thing for a moment because it's not just about that, because it ties into Uncle Ben and everything else. And all joking aside, obviously we love to troll each other, but him not having you're saying the Osborn it doesn't exist, but it does, because now he realizes it does.
He's out there somewhere.
Yeah, that's the point.
And now he's going to be more cautious when he comes up. But that's great. But
he doesn't have to come up.
I'm just.
Hey, do you find it interesting that
it's kind of like, well, what if Matt Reeves' Batman never faces the Joker? Like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't know.
Well, I don't think. Well, and maybe I'm just not as big of a Spider-Man film as you to. I don't think
Green Goblin's a big villain, man. Like I know
he is, but
it's a good twist that they did it.
But he's fought him though. That's just
it's a weird twist. I get it.
But I love it. That's just it. I love it.
I give it credit because here's the thing, Rick. This movie shouldn't be this good. This movie has no reason being this good.
I agree with that. I agree
because of what it is.
But see,
you're combining a beloved trilogy, this current mega blockbuster version, and essentially these failed two movies. And
hey, you know what?
Everyone loves them.
Do you know what Jennifer? My wife pointed out.
What's up?
And I don't know if this was intentional, and maybe we're reading too much into it, but when she said it, and I was like, wow, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Is that remember when the three Spider-Man, which is what, dude, that shouldn't have worked. It should have been a shit show, and instead it was. I smiled ear to ear. First of all, they all three apparently are friends. I think you can tell. And they just bounced off each other. They're just sheer joy. I mean, I love that shouldn't have worked. But there's a moment where they're sitting there, they're talking, and they're like, look, this isn't working out. And the other two are like, look, we're not used to working. I'm not used to working on a team. I'm not either. He's like, well, in all fairness, I'm not trying to brag here, but I was on the Avengers. And they're like, the Avengers, what is that? Like a rock band? That's awesome. Which I thought was great. Again, goes to some of your issues where, see, that Spider-Man dealing with all that and Tony Stark doesn't exist in their world, but they all exist. You know what I mean? Like I get it. It's meta.
Peace and love.
Yeah, peace and love. It's meta as fuck, really. But anyway, but Jen pointed out that the point in the moment where Tom Holland was Peter 1 and Toby was Peter 2, and then something about Andrew Garfield's like, hey, I'm Peter 3, almost like I'm the least favorite Spider-Man movies. I thought, was that the intention behind that? Maybe not, but that's it brings a little bit more alive to that. But let's talk about Uncle Ben for a second, because we're getting nowhere with the Osborn things. I think you're thinking I'm focusing on that, and that's my fault, not yours. So let me try to make this.
It's always your fault. It's always
I'm trying to make a point, and as a host, I'm failing here. So let me redirect. All right. So let's talk about Uncle Ben. It's because it's tied into what I'm trying to accomplish here with this, is that you always had issues with that. I understand that that's like Bruce Wayne not seeing his parents get killed in front of him. That's like Bruce Wayne, not the genesis of everything he's doing being about his parents. I think with the MCU, I think Tony Stark played that role. And by virtue of that, to have Uncle Ben would muddle that. Like, how do you balance that out? And I think Aunt May and Tony sort of represented Uncle Ben, right? As a hybrid character. But what I love about bringing those other two actors in is that they talked to him about their Uncle Ben. And like their Uncle Ben was
right.
Their Tony Stark and their Aunt May.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole and her saying the great line, with great power comes great responsibility. Does that satisfy you now? And maybe the same way of seeing Tom Holland's Spider-Man very literally fight the Green Goblin. Are you okay with Uncle Ben and Norman Osborn just not being in future films? Because obviously, why would they? But is that okay with you?
It's clearly not okay with me. But like, I can let it surpass because I have like.
Okay, is it better for you?
Movies.
Is it better for you now because they at least did that? How's that question?
Oh, it's definitely an easier pill to swallow.
Okay.
I'm also not gonna be like, I'm not gonna roar and hashtag and all that stuff. I'm not gonna do that. I'll vent a little bit after I see it, but like, I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be like an ongoing thing. Again, these are just opinions. So
no, of course they are, and it's all in good fun. But at the very end of the movie, which I love, dude, God, I love the ending.
No, it was good.
I mean, and I love how did the producers of the film, did the creative team behind all this, did they say, let's now let Tom Holland Spider-Man? Was this a conscious thing? They said, let's now let him be just the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man without any association with the Avengers, and that's the next few movies we're going to get.
I'm interested to see where it goes because I feel like Spider-Man is honestly, I think from what Marvel was actually intending on doing, like basically coming off of like Civil War into Homecoming, is a totally different plan than where they are now. To be honest, I think that this was kind of, I don't want to say course corrected, but I definitely feel like that they strayed away from the original plan, whatever they were going to do. I don't think they were going to. For the third movie, this is just a huge concept to me, and it's ambitious. And DC's doing their own thing with the Flash, which this movie is essentially a warm up for the Flash. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
When Keaton
in what way? Because we saw Andrew Garfield and we saw Tobey Maguire. We got excited.
It's like seeing Andrew pop up first and seeing Tobey pop up was a pretty big deal as a Spider-Man fan. But seeing Keaton for the first time in the Flash.
Yeah.
If it's in Cowl, dude, like I'm gonna lose it. But well, it was a warm up for that. But
isn't it great that in that sizzle reel for Flash that it's Keaton narrating it?
Yeah.
And then he walks at the end. You see the back of his couch, so obviously his. And then obviously the car. God, dude, it's so great. And now and not to get off down a rabbit hole Batman stuff, but even though this is a Batman affiliated podcast. And it's why we're all here, really, at the end of the day. It's really cool. Keaton's going to be in Batgirl. I mean, that's
even great too. Like,
I'm here for it.
I'm like, bring it on. Like, sure, okay. Like, let's see what you guys got. Like, I want to see. Show me something. If it stinks, I'll tell you it stinks. But show me something. At least they have ideas.
Yeah, they have ideas, and they're bringing back. And I tweeted this recently. I'm like, wouldn't it be funny and kind of?
Did you retweet yourself?
I did. I retweeted myself because God created retweeting for a reason. And I'm not cheating God. I'm not cheating God. But we might be going down a path where Michael Keaton ends up being the most screen time cinematic Batman we've ever had.
I've been saying this, man. Keaton's the most beloved Batman of our generation. He just is. Like at this point, he totally is. Now that it's sad that Adam West has recently passed, but I think Keaton is now. And if the Flash is good and Batgirl's good, like this is gonna even cement that even further. Like
absolutely.
Let's face it, it's gonna be hard to fight at this point with the two movies, 89 and Batman Returns. Plus the Flash and Batgirl, that's a hell of a Batman resume compared to everybody else.
Sure, we probably would never even have had Batman 89 without Superman the movie working and Superman 2 working. But yeah, absolutely. It made this.
Which never would have led us to Spider-Man, and
no, but Batman 89 working is why we're really here.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
no, it goes from like 78 to 89 to basically, Spider-Man. Well, Blade too, but you would throw Blade in there.
sure, but I mean, it's remarkable. The last time Keaton played Batman on screen, I was a junior in high school. I'm 46. That's pretty wild to say that out loud. But I do want to ask you before we jump off this and I bring on Sheriff Haas and Clow about the new Batman trailer that dropped today. Let's get to that in a second. Let's wrap up with Spider-Man here. So I'll just say this: I really I love the Tom Holland stuff. I do. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's stuff in there that I'm like, this is more Spider-Man than anything I've ever seen. And a lot of it just has to do with, for me, I just think some of the Peter Parker stuff, I just felt we really tap more. I mean, let's face it, there's much more of his high school life, right? Than the other, in terms of the Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker films.
Yeah, Garfield probably had more high school version of Peter. College Peter was mostly go rated movies.
Yeah. But I mean, did we need to see him go to Europe? I don't know. To me, it worked, and I love what they did with Mysterio.
It's kind of stiff for me.
Yeah, that's all right. And at the time, remember, I was banging that drum for Jake Gyllenhaal to play
Batman, yeah.
But isn't it crazy that you look at it, everything's going, how many crossover actors that we're getting now? I mean, Keaton still.
Actors need work, man. That's it. What are they making? They're making comic movies. So there you go.
I know. And I know we've talked about this a million times, but it's changed so much. Like Chris Reeve was typecast after Superman. You don't hear about that anymore. No one gives a fuck. No. I've told this story a million times.
Now you want to be typecast because that means convention money. That means autographs. That means you could sell your name.
I mean, look at Ryan Reynolds. His Green Lantern didn't quite work. I mean, I didn't have a problem with it, but it just didn't work. And you think, well, his career is dead in terms of comic book movies. What's he do? Turns around and freaking Deadpool. I mean, it's ridiculous. How it's great, but it's just
and you'd have Ryan Reynolds back in Green Lantern 2 in a heartbeat if you could do it, right? Let's be honest.
Sure.
If Reynolds is like, I want to make Green Lantern 2, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, cool, do it. Like, we learned our mistakes, definitely. Like,
correct.
You're gonna say no to him?
So let me ask you this. So let me just say this too. One of the things I was really hoping for is because look, we knew. I mean, we didn't know. I didn't have inside information on this. I don't know.
You got all the inside scoops.
No. But we knew in our hearts of heart that Andrew Garfield and Maguire were going to be in this. There's no way you're going to bring back Defoe's Green Goblin, Doc Ock. You're not going to do that and not have these guys in it.
I'm not going to lie. At one point, I was kind of like, I kind of hope they're not in it because I would love to see the meltdown.
Yeah,
I'm like, you tricked us.
Yeah, people would have stormed the.
Yeah,
I was going to say storm the Capitol, but anyway, I won't even elaborate on that. Moving on.
Left Crow.
Oh man, you made me lose my train of thought here. But we didn't know that we were. But I didn't know again how well it would work, and that to me is the biggest compliment of this movie I can give. Is we knew at the end of the day they were going to be in it. It was still very exciting. I mean, I cheered and smiled ear to ear when Andrew Garfield made his entrance. But I really wanted. Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Got it now. I really wanted a conversation, or at least a reference or an acknowledgement that Tobey Maguire's Peter can shoot webs out of his body. And dude, not only did I get it, it turned into like one of the funniest, most charming parts of the movie. Yeah. It just because they're having like, no, really, no, I'm not trying to like, troll you or anything, but we're like genuinely curious. Like, we can't do that. Does it like shoot out of other parts of your body? And Tobey Maguire's like, I don't know. I can't explain it. It's like me breathing. I can't tell you how I breathe. It just, kind of happens. And Andrew Garfield's like, I'm not gonna make mine. You know what a pain in the ass it is? It's so real. It's like three buddies sitting around at a bar having a conversation about their web shooter. Oh, so much fun. All right, so to wrap up the Star Wars, the Spider-Man episode here, and you alluded to this earlier, but where do you think this goes? Okay, let's talk about the post-credit scene, for instance. Did that surprise you? Not the Doctor Strange standalone, but
it surprised me how they did it. Like, so maybe this version of Spider-Man doesn't fight Tom Hardy's Venom. Maybe somehow that symbiote makes its way from that bar to New York. and that starts Tom Holland's black suit saga. Maybe that's how that works.
Yep.
And then there's a different version of what's his name? What's his? I'm blanking.
Topher Grace.
No, Eddie Brock. There's
Oh,
that
the
version of Eddie Brock. You know, so who knows? Maybe we'll. I'd like to see Scorpion. They've been teasing Scorpion.
Yeah.
Or they have. I remember they did in Homecoming because I love Homecoming. I'm a big fan of that movie. They tease Scorpion a lot in that movie. I believe that the actor and Keaton are.
I didn't realize you loved
Morbius.
Homecoming.
Big Homecoming fan. Yeah, love.
Homecoming. Oh, are you really?
Yeah, really, really enjoy it. No, I just don't like Far From Home.
Okay, I thought your issues were a little.
No, I like Homecoming a lot, and a lot of it's Keaton. Keaton's phenomenal in that role.
Yeah, absolutely. That scene where he what's he call his daughter, Cupcake or Gumdrop, calls her Gumdrop. You know, go in the house, Gumdrop. Daddy loves you. Or going to the.
I'm excited because that's the next my Spider-Man show, Italians for Spider-Man. We're gonna do. We just finished the Garfield stuff, so we're phasing into the MCU stuff.
Isn't that a great scene, dude?
We're actually starting with No Way Home. We're going to do a big review show for that, and then we'll go back to Homecoming. But
don't you love when he looks at him and he says, "Does she know?"
Yeah,
the tension,
the tone of his voice.
Yeah, and Tom Holland does a great job with that scene. Like, know what? But he knows that he knows.
We probably don't get Keaton in the Flash if he doesn't do Vulture.
You know? He was on.
Look at that. You look at him and you're like, he still got it.
Yeah,
he still got it, you know. And now after seeing Defoe kick ass in No Way Home, I'm like, oh, Keaton still got one badass action scene in him.
Did you see his 60 Minutes thing?
Keaton's? No, because I'm trying to stay as spoiler free as possible because I know he's going to start the PR tour. He's talking about this. Like he's talking about it very minimally, but I know it's going to start ramping up soon.
Well, then I won't say it because it might be something that you know. Well, no, he mentions that he had just filmed something with Vulture, and I wasn't sure exactly what that.
I believe that's Morbius.
It probably is Jared Leto. Yeah. But
from what I've heard, it's Morbius.
Yeah, that's probably. But he let it slip. You can kind of see the look.
But it's great though because like I'm into this. I'm a big fan of this whole Sony Spider-Man Spider-Man universe. I like Venom. I like Venom. Let There Be Carnage. I don't like it as much as the first Venom, but I dig that. I'm going to check out this Morbius movie, see what that's about, and we'll see what happens. We know Venom has made his way officially into an MCU film. We know Tom Holland has made his way officially into a Spider-Man verse film.
Who was Bane and Keaton was Batman. And Jake Gyllenhaal was considered Batman. His sister played Rachel Dawes in Dark Knight, and it's so 7 Degrees of Batman. It's great. I'm gonna do me and my rankings. How do you like to rank? I'm gonna let you choose this.
Dude, hold on. Let me just get my phone out so we can do this properly. I'm on Letterboxd, bro. Please.
Well, are you if I do a letter or 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, what do you prefer for this? Because there's no audio.
Well, how are we doing? Are we doing just like
I'm going down every Spider-Man movie. Not live action.
I have a list for that. I have a list for that.
Okay, but we're killing airtime here.
Let's go. Right,
okay,
we're good.
Okay. But are you doing just so the audience knows here? How are you grading?
I'm going from there are 8 theatrical live action Spider-Man films. I'm going to rank the 8 films.
Yeah, but I want to know how you feel about each individual one, just not where they rank.
That's fine.
Okay, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Spider-Man is my number 2 movie. I love Spider-Man. It's probably one of the most important ones.
Spider-Man 2.
All-time great. Probably only rivals The Dark Knight.
Still my favorite also at the end of the day, honestly. Spider-Man 3, underrated in a lot of ways.
Underrated, average, CBM, good. People give it too much credit. Don't give enough credit.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man is 4. I think it's a solid Spider-Man movie. It's definitely inspired by Batman Begins.
Yeah. Amazing Spider-Man 2.
That's at number 8. It's one of the weaker versions. It's okay.
Yeah. Amazing Spider-Man 2. I got you. Okay. Homecoming.
Homecoming's great. I think the Peter Parker stuff really shines. I don't think it's really weighed down by the MCU stuff.
That's great. I'm really surprised to hear that. I don't know how it just
on my list.
I did. I apologize for not acknowledging that. I've trolled you.
You should be.
I'm sorry. All right. So, and then obviously you don't like Far From Home very much.
No. And I have No Way Home at 5.
No Way Home at 5. Got it. and Into the Spider-Verse, just to throw it in there.
Yeah. If I had to put Spider-Verse anywhere, it goes between No Way Home and Spider-Man 3.
You like the scene? I think it was great where Jamie Foxx is like, man, I just thought you're real nice. You're witty. You like to say people wear a cool costume. I just thought maybe you'd be black.
Yeah.
I hope there's a black side of Spider-Man out there somewhere.
I do think it's interesting. Like Jamie Foxx is the most interesting change out of everyone. It's almost like he's a completely different version of Electro from some universe. I was like, while the other two I felt were like those two characters pulled right out of their movies, I thought Jamie Foxx was like maybe an Earth to the right,
Yeah.
He just the way the character acted just felt different. He just played the character different.
All right. So wrapping it up here, though, we both agree that No Way Home is a great Spider-Man film.
Yeah.
The three actors did a really good job. Do you think will we see Tobey Maguire and or Andrew Garfield again? My guess is I think we will, but I could be wrong.
I'm definitely not going to say no at this point. We'll see.
We'll see. Okay. To wrap it up, at least this section of the show, before I bring in old Sheriff Hoss and Chris Clow here, and I'd love for you to stick around, but you're just not a big Matrix fan, so
that's not true. You're lying against Shew. You're lying out your ass.
Well, have you seen the new one yet?
It's been Christmas.
It's streaming on HBO Max, and you haven't seen it. This is a
movie that is meant to be watched on the big screen. I'm not going to do it for free. I'm going to support the film industry.
Hey, you know what? God bless you for that. I saw it. I have not even supported it, dude. I saw it at a press screening. I saw this one early.
Oh, God.
I saw it like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks
ago. Press screening gets movies for free. No.
Listen,
it's all,
dude. You know what it is? It's Bill has it all. Bill has it all set up in Houston and Dallas and Austin long before I was here, or long after I'm gone.
Bill jet raining.
I just rode the Texas coattails. This is, but anyway,
go Cowboys!
Go Cowboys! Can't wait for the watch party, by the way. But
it's gonna be great.
But let me just ask you this, dude. The new Batman trailer kind of unexpectedly dropped today.
Man, was that thing awesome.
Give me your initial thoughts on it.
I thought it was great. Lots of new stuff in there. Lots of new voiceovers, lots of new footage. I was surprised at how much new was in the trailer. I was one who didn't need a new one, but this was nice to have. Just really kind of surprised and thrown off guard. Didn't think we were going to get one.
I really like the Bruce and Selena stuff, which is obviously the focus of the commercial or the trailer. It's called the Batman.
We'll see. It seems like every time they do Bruce and Selena, they get way more intimate and personal. So this seems to be the most intimate movie between the two of them yet.
One thing I've noticed too is that we talk about this film being more grounded than
which is nuts to say.
Than the Nolan films. Maybe it will be, maybe it's not, maybe it's relatively the same, whatever. What I have noticed is that at least with Catwoman, it seems like Reeves is playing that up a lot more than Nolan did, right? With Anne Hathaway. It's a little bit more comic booky, a little bit more heightened.
I think she has way more to do with the plot. She was in Rises. She was almost kind of going rogue, and she did get the thumbprints, but she was mostly looking out for herself.
Yeah.
And here it feels like she does, but it definitely feels like she literally says "Batcat." Like she's.
Yeah, it's great.
It seems like
she's like got a nice ring.
Kind of wants to team up.
Yeah, and I love his whole thing too, where he says, it's not risking your life for Selena. And she's like, why? Well, don't worry, honey. I've got 9 of them. That's so great. So great. Yeah.
I love a ballsy Catwoman.
Well, I love you, Pete.
Oh, Nikki Shews, love you too.
Nikki Shews, dude, it's so great doing the show with you. You're so fucking.
I
good
wish
at
Hoss
this.
was here. I can't believe Hoss isn't here.
You're so good at this. You really are. You're one of the best in this whole internet Batman comic book and analysis. Your interview with Michael Uzlan is some of the finest stuff that Batman on BOF has ever put up.
Moments.
Oh, it's so great. You're so great, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, I love you as a friend, but I mean, I'm a fan of your work. You're great. So looking forward to seeing you in March. Hey, listen, on a side note, me and Jen and my stepdaughter are supposed to be coming to New York shortly after our BOF watch party to take her to some theater and NYU and all that stuff. But dude, with all, now shows are closing with this new variant. And so that's up in the air again. So we'll see. But the Dallas trip is imminent. So that's great. Hopefully, knock on wood. So I'll see you in a couple months, but before I introduce, it's Chris Clow and Ryan Hoss. I mean, come on, it's BOF alum. What do you want to plug?
You can follow me on social media. That's Twitter, Instagram, and Zack Snyder's favorite Verra at Pete Illustrated. You can follow podcast number 1. That's Straight Outta Gotham at straight_O_G on both Instagram and Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. We have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. consider joining and following both. Check me out at Italians for Spidey. That's the Italian Spider-Man Coalition podcast that I host with Nick and Nico Caruso. That's a Spider-Man based podcast. That's fun there. Check out at Team Yellow Oval. That's fun little Twitter stuff going on there. Check out Bat Pod Network at Twitter. There's lots of great podcasts associated with Batman on Film, and this one's on there. My show's on there. Lots of good stuff on there. Check out batmanonfilm.com for my reviews of Detective Comics, and check out Batman on Film YouTube for my interview with Michael Uslin.
That's right, baby. All right, Pete Verra, everybody, love you, buddy. I'll see you in March in the Big D, dog.
Go Cowboys! Super Bowl
Go Cowboys!
champions!
The Batman is coming.
Batman's coming! Halftime Super Bowl. Dak Prescott.
Hey, are the Cowboys going to the Super Bowl?
How about them Cowboys?
All right, we'll leave it there. Love you, dude. All right, everybody. Pete Verra. It was a lot of fun chatting with Pete. So now let's do the second half of the show. I got is everybody here? Sheriff Haas?
Yes.
Ryan Haas, everybody, the co-host of the BOF Satellite Show and whatever else. I mean, what else? What else, Ryan? What defines you?
I don't know anymore, Rick. What is BOF show? What is the Matrix? I don't know.
What is the Matrix? Great setup. Not contrived at all. I love it. So everybody, like I said at the top of the show, this episode is we are concluding the Matrix discussion. Chris Clow and Ryan Haas and myself started we did the first episode, and then Scott Mendelson from Forbes and I discussed the sequels, and here we are to discuss Matrix Resurrections. But Pete Verra and I did a little Spider-Man and Batman chat. So before we jump into this the conclusion of our Matrix trilogy podcast, just some rough thoughts real quick. Chris Scott, what did you think of No Way Home?
Oh, I loved it. The only way that I feel like I can adequately describe it is by calling it what I think it is, which is just a celebration of the character's entire cinematic legacy going back to 2002. I mean, it threw in addition to having certain characters appear. I don't know. I mean, you guys probably talked about that, I assume, right?
Well, at this point, it's on, the cast is openly talking about it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's fair game.
Sure.
Now.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you had those performers there reprising their versions of Peter Parker is obviously a very big indicator about what it's trying to go for. But at the same time, too, the thing that I kind of felt was missing from the MCU Spider-Man movies was like you had a sense of grandeur to the kinds of plots that Peter was put up against, but what you didn't have was this really potent sense of threat that honestly has probably been missing from the Spider-Man movies since 2004. The Amazing movies. Even Amy Pascal recently said, yeah, we lean too much into the biology of things recently instead of technology. And that's true. But also, too, I wasn't expecting just the potency of the threat represented primarily by Norman Osborn to provide as much of an emotional punch in No Way Home as it did. And that I found really refreshing. But then you also have the interplay between the Spider-Men, which stole the show. I'm not a huge fan of Andrew Garfield's movies, but I've never been critical of him as a performer in the role of Spider-Man, and he really brought it this time. And it was cool to see him given a semblance of what I assume to be closure with that part, and tying into probably one of the more potent emotional beats that his movies presented, in addition to the death of Gwen Stacy just being a landmark moment in comic book storytelling in general. The fact that they were able to sort of incorporate the emotional journey that Peter went through in this was very powerful in a way that I wasn't expecting. So on top of all of that, you just have really great performances from new and returning cast members. And it was just a giant 2.5 hour Spider-Man party. So I was totally there for it.
That's exactly right. It was a 2.5 hour Spider-Man party. I've seen it twice. That's the most perfect way to put it. And what I told Pete, I said, having all those actors back on, none of that should have worked. You know what I mean? Like the rules of cinema with those egos, and they're playing the same character, and it just shouldn't have worked. It should have been contrived. It should have been convoluted. It should have been awkward. You ever seen like kind of, be careful what you wish for. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good example of something, but a reunion episode of a beloved sitcom or something like that.
Oh yeah, totally.
And
Yeah.
you're
But
watching.
you know what? That's comic books have, as a medium, they've done this kind of thing for years, and we're right now entering into this phase of, comic book movies where it's feasible to do these kinds of things. Spider-Man does it. We're gonna see it next year with the Flash.
But
more than just the fact that it's feasible now, you
Right.
have movies and movie makers, filmmakers themselves, and the production companies, but really primarily the filmmakers, who are excited about evoking that angle of comics. Because for a long time, The Dark Knight, as good of a movie as it is, popularized the notion of needing to go dark and gritty at every step of the way. And that's not a formula that works universally for every character. Like, it works for Batman because that's who Batman is. But if you try and apply one thing I remember Frank Miller saying, like in 2005, you guys have probably seen the interview where he said it, that people try to apply a brand of realism to comics characters that is, from his point of view, he said, rather stupid. And the way that he phrased it, I don't need to see sweat patches under Superman's arms. I want to see him fly. And I thought that was a really succinct way of putting it. It was strange coming from Frank Miller.
Right.
But you have people who are excited about evoking the multiversal aspect. And DC innovated the multiverse in comics. It's Flash number 123 that brought the Flash of Two Worlds, Barry Allen meets Jay Garrick. And now you have the Flash movie that's going to be incorporating that stuff. But on top of that, you have these now long-standing cinematic legacies going back decades. And if you have the opportunity to have multiple versions of a certain character show up in a movie, why the hell not?
I understand.
And they've started to do it in the CW stuff and
right. Yeah.
But the thing is like,
but those
to Rick's point,
those weren't established actors though, and
to Rick's point, this is probably the most like high profile like real movie like that's tried to do something like this. And
it is.
And on paper, like it's like, ooh, this might not be so great. Like, but it could come off as like just a giant stunt, and to their advantage, like it didn't feel like that in execution. Like they used it to their advantage, and it's not just, and having those extra Spider-Men in the movie, it helped them all individually, and it helped speak to Tom Holland's Spider-Man and the whole movie, which I think is brilliant. It's like a big, it like fills in the gaps of what I felt like were a lot of deficiencies in like what Spider-Man kind of is, and for Tom Holland's version of the character, and the way it like resets things for him and the playing field for him, the status quo for him at the end of the movie, just like comic books could, like after a big crossover. It's really clever.
It turned one of his worst stories into a solid plot point, because I read One More Day when it came out. And I think a lot of people were justifiably disappointed with the angle that it took in reshaping his cinematic, in reshaping the comic book character's direction. There were some good things that came from that, but also too, it was just a pretty sloppy story. It was it reeked of being an editorial mandate, because that's what it was.
Reeked of the gimmick.
Yeah, but if you have the chance to adapt that in a way that makes it feel stronger and more rooted into the strengths of another medium, go for it. And it showed that it can work. So, the Straczynski run of Spider-Man is one of my all-time favorite comic book runs. I've actually got the omnibus coming when they reprint it, because I want to relive it. It was great. But, it had some questionable moments in there. But when you see the stories evoke certain components from the comics and potentially do it even better, then that's awesome. And No Way Home absolutely accomplished that. And Spider-Man is now effectively the only MCU character, at least of note, with a secret identity. And that's a core component of who he's supposed to be. So I'm really glad that they didn't ditch his secret identity entirely. I'm glad that it's intact.
And what you just said sort of comes full circle on my larger, call it a point, but what works in comic books, and I've said this a million times, so forgive me to say it again, doesn't mean it translates to live action, right? And for something like this with established actors playing an established character in a multitude of films to come together all these years later. And let's face it, when did Spider-Man 3 come out? 2000 what?
Seven.
Seven.
Yeah.
That's the last time Tobey Maguire played Peter Parker Spider-Man. That's a long time ago. It's 2022.
Before the Dark Knight. Yeah.
Correct. And for him to just roll back into that role seamlessly
Before the MCU.
I mean, just amazing stuff. And their banter. And Ryan, remember you and I talked about this before the movie came out. I was like, please tell me there's a scene where they discuss the fact that Tobey Maguire can shoot webs out of his body. And they did, and it worked, and it was charming and funny, and it made me almost cry because it was so goddamn delightful. But anyway, we'll talk for an hour on this. Just Ryan, you agree with all this too. You love the correct? Yeah.
No, I've seen it twice. The audience was just nuts both times. I saw it, the first out of all my friends to see it.
Yeah, God, it's so good.
But yeah, I saw like first screening I could possibly see it. Like I think me and Bill saw it like the 3:00 Thursday, or whatever the first possible screen.
Yeah, that's when Paul and I saw it. It was around 6:30 that Thursday night, the day before my birthday.
Oh, happy belated! Well, Bill, because
you.
Bill sent Courtney Cheek in Dallas to go see it.
Yeah.
Because he had missed the press screening, and then I was a little late to the party to see it. I did, however, see Matrix a week early. So let's segue into that, and then we can give some final thoughts on Spider-Man. And before we jump off the show, I do want just at least a couple minutes to get you guys' thoughts on the new Batman trailer that dropped today. Assuming you guys both, I know Ryan, I know you did. Right, Chris, did you see it?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's a fun part of the first part of the show, Pete, by the way, so be sure to listen to the whole thing. Anyway, so I am unapologetically a lover of the Matrix films, plural, because the sequels oftentimes are bash and everybody loves the first one, but 2 and 3, whatever. Scott Mendelson and I, we launched that show. Ryan, I won't thank you because you're the co-host of the show. This is our show, but we'll both thank Chris for doing that for us. But I talked to Scott Mendelson from Forbes for the second episode, where we kind of dived into a little bit about the sequels and whatnot, box office projections, et cetera, just sort of the franchise as a whole, but talked about the sequels as films and what we thought about them. And I love them. And so when this film was coming out, I wasn't sure what to think, obviously, as a fan. What are they going to do? Neo, Trinity are both dead, whatever. They bargained a deal between the machines and the real world. And where does it have to go? Those are all the same basic questions we always ask when a franchise continues, especially something with a quote definitive ending, because that was a definitive trilogy. And I will tell you guys, for me, the first, I don't know. I love the opening scene, and I love it more now that I've seen it twice. But when we start seeing Thomas Anderson, I won't even call him Neo, in his new environment, and it's so meta, where Matrix is a game he created, and the characters and the whole corporate America angle about the fourth one, and some of that stuff to me shouldn't have worked either. Where Warner Brothers just being really greedy, and they just got to have a fourth one. They can't just settle for the 3 that they made or whatever they said. And
they're gonna make it with or without you, and so now you got to do yeah.
And again, it kind of goes to the heart of that shouldn't have worked. And the soundtrack and the beats and the editing and quite frankly the acting, I think I love this movie. I mean, I loved it out of the gate. I love this movie. It bombed at the box office. We can talk about that. People can talk about streaming simultaneously on HBO Max. I think there's examples of films that could counter that point. Obviously, we can't blame COVID because the aforementioned Spider-Man is already done. Where we at on this thing? 1 billion plus already. It's a juggernaut in the making. So, Chris, as our guest here, what are your thoughts on this on the new Matrix? I'm just surprised and bummed, and I don't want to have a negative connotation here, but why is this thing bombing? I love this movie. I love it.
I'm not surprised. Yeah? Because I think that it is attributable to everything that you mentioned. That Spider-Man came out right before the latest wave hit hard. Omicron is more virulent, but it looks like less severe, but that's just going to make it spread quickly. It's probably honestly, I mean, if we have to have another wave, that's a good scenario. If it means less people go into the hospital, but more people get it, then maybe that means it'll plateau faster. And it looks like it is plateauing pretty fast. But Spider-Man showed up right before things really kicked into high gear with Omicron, and the HBO Max experiment just didn't work. It was the right move in terms of public safety, not the right move in terms of recouping monetary value from these giant films. And we've seen it all year with Warner Brothers. We haven't seen it with other studios because other studios haven't had as blatant and blanket and aggressive a release strategy tied to their streaming service as Warner Brothers has. And the experiment just failed in terms of recouping. Now, we haven't seen what the metrics, at least I haven't seen what the metrics look like in terms of how satisfied they are with viewer engagement, for instance. Maybe it's really doing its job on that front, and we just don't have access to that information. But as soon as it became clear that this strategy was not going to work in terms of, bringing in monetary value for the people who have who even value a theatrical viewing experience, the writing was on the wall months ago for this. So I'm not surprised in the least. If it had come out, strictly speaking, as a theatrical release, I think we'd be talking about a different story. But you have now a more virulent strain of the virus that's prolonging the pandemic. You have vaccine hesitancy among people that is probably making people who would be receptive to going to a movie theater less so, understandably so, because of their safety concerns.
And it's like one of those, like, it's a holiday movie. It comes out like right before the holiday, and like you have two other movies that are way more like family friendly if you're going to go out to the theater see things. I mean, there's a lot.
But Spider-Man's not as family friendly in my view. I mean,
it might not be.
May's death is like intense. God,
yeah, it is. But at the same time, too, I mean, it's just a matter of I think it's also fair, even though I disagree with the predominant thoughts about them. It's fair to say that the Spider-Man, the Matrix film franchise, did not end by giving a very good taste to many other people's mouths. The people who were, I think, a little too concerned with the window dressing as opposed to the substance of what the stories were trying to say. That's a personal opinion, but it's likely that not very many people were clamoring for this. The Wachowskis in general, the audiences are often polarized with the movies that they make. So this is kind of just an extension of a lot of the things that we've been seeing. And then it's just exacerbated by the shared trauma of the pandemic that all of us are going through at the same time. And that is not working out for Warner Brothers theatrical releases, at least in terms of the bottom line.
So it's a lot in one big bowl of stew, because we could argue, I could push back on a component of that and say, yeah, but let's look at Spider-Man's second, third weekend, whatever it is, performance that doesn't really jive with what you're saying.
But it's also the only way to go.
Correct.
The only place to see that,
and that's what I was about to say.
Theater.
But it's the only way to go. And and then to your larger point, I don't know you don't know, we don't know and the whole streaming thing, whether it's Zack Snyder's Justice League or whatever, how you monitor that, how you judge that, the barometer for that, I don't know. I can't get my head wrapped around
it. If people are balancing the concern about their safety with the availability of the experience, and you have the movie streaming in the highest possible fidelity that is possible via current streaming, what real incentive is there for them to go out and spend, I don't know, depending on the amount of people in your party, upwards of $30 or $40 to sit in a room full of people indoors who might not be observing mask requirements. And in many cases, it's not like you can eat popcorn wearing a mask, so you have to pull it down. I mean, there's too many factors at play for people to be totally comfortable with the concept.
So Jen and I have 5 kids between us, and we took all 5 plus us 2 to Spider-Man Homecoming, 4:00 screening, 3:00 screening, something like that. Just tickets was $190, $200, and that's expensive, right? And so if you're gonna like risk versus reward, if I'm gonna go out and spend that kind of money, I want to have the experience. I also don't want to put my family at risk, kind of thing.
Also,
right?
man, I make pretty great popcorn at home. I don't know about you, but
we
my
And
make
you can
popcorn
hit
popcorn too.
pause. You can. Well,
You, yeah.
let's in the time for the show that we have, let's talk about, because this is all great stuff. And I'm glad we discussed it because it's important. And I started it because I defend those Matrix sequels like I do the Star Wars prequels. And I guess some even the Star
Yeah.
Wars sequels. And it's personal to me. And I watched the Resurrections again the other day, and I'm just sitting there. I'm going, I love this movie. I love it. This is the best one since the first one, and I love the sequels. Ryan, what did you think of let's set aside how the sausage was made, box office, the great analysis Chris is giving. All this stuff is valid and interesting, but just as a fucking movie, man, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I was able to turn off like the external chatter and just kind of experience it. Again, this for that one, although it was on HBO, I went to the theater. I went to 11:30 a.m. IMAX screening, first screening I possibly could. And it too was pretty packed. So it was a bunch of Matrix diehards that would have been in that screening, and more subdued than the Spider-Man rip roaring fest, but like people were engaged and enjoy the movie. Like, yeah, so I loved it. I really loved the movie, and before I tried not to get too much into the pre-review stuff, but like beforehand, I heard before and since everybody is all over the map with this movie, which I think is like Chris was saying, like that's definitely a Wachowski thing with their films, but it also speaks to the Matrix. What is the Matrix? People don't know. Like some people think they do, some people think they don't. People, and so like it's really interesting to see like I've heard some people say, "Oh, if you loved the sequels, you're gonna love this," or I've heard the exact opposite. It's so crazy to see what people try to figure out, like try to pinpoint what this movie is, like in one like statement. But for me, the whole thing worked.
Me too.
Like Chris talked a little bit about in our first episode of this, where we talked about what we were expecting of this movie. About the origins of how this film kind of came about, and it went through tragedy about how the Wachowski's parents passed away, and how this like the genesis of where the story of this movie came from. And it is a tricky thing to have kind of a definitive like really good trilogy. It's almost like if Nolan came back and did like another Batman, really like, why would you mess with that? Why would you make a fourth movie? You would have to say something and not just be another thing in that entry. Some people say that this movie is that. I wholeheartedly disagree. It finds a way to like, it has something to say. Like you just strip all the Matrix stuff out of it, the movie still has something to say, and I think that's like really smart. And it has a lot of good commentary, and still is the Matrix. A lot of people have critiques have been about like, oh, it's so self-referential and it's just kind of like
It's
a
not.
parody at this point.
Yeah.
But it's if there's any franchise that can do the kinds of things that this movie did, it is the Matrix, and it can be
Correct.
self-referential. It's its own. It's this chance to finally talk about itself and what's happened in the 20 years since,
or 60 years, depending on.
Yeah.
But that's just it. You're right. This actually is the Matrix. And my favorite scene in the movie, and one of my favorite in the franchise, is when he sits down to talk to Trinity, who is Tiffany. Is that her name? Yeah. And what's really great is when she says, I showed the scene from your game to my husband Steve, and I thought I even kind of looked like her, and he laughed and said, "No, it's ridiculous. How could I?" And I'm like, wow. But then you see her reflection and how she actually looks. I'm like, oh wow, that's why he said that. It wasn't you so obviously look like her. That's almost ridiculous that somebody would say you don't look like her. And just that moment of her realizing kind of who she really is, but not able to fully embrace it, thinking she might know who he is. That's my interpretation. Could be wrong. But not real confident it is. And the whole thing was very complex and nuanced. and I thought it was beautifully written, and I love the pacing of it. And then all of a sudden, yeah, we're parents. Mine are a little older now, obviously, but Lego in the nose. You're like, yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a beautiful movie, Chris. I kind of cheated you a little bit, and you were in a position to respond about my box office grievances. What did you think of it just as a film?
It's a movie that should not exist. And the fact that it does is in and of itself a comment on franchise filmmaking. And I find that, even before you get in the door, to be kind of brilliant. Then when you get into the movie, it's the most aware entry of any franchise film I've ever seen, because in terms of public discussions around the Matrix as a film series, it is extremely lopsided in favor of the first movie. And what better way to represent that than by starting with the same scene that the first movie starts with?
Mhm.
Threw me for a loop first time I watched it, because
Mhm.
I knew that something was amiss. I just didn't quite know what. And as the movie went on, it's different for me in terms of a lot of other movies that I watch, because unlike the vast majority of films that I probably take the time to absorb, I was craving more exposition from this movie. And it didn't disappoint, thankfully. I mean, the Matrix movies are notoriously
Dense.
heavy on
Yeah.
exposition, kind of by necessity. But
Yeah.
as you start to learn more about uh, the setting in the relation to the previous three films, and exactly what's happening and what has happened to the Matrix itself in terms of being used as a tool for control, and the way that it has evolved into something that was even potentially more insidious than it used to be, is a very appropriate comment to make on the way that society is structured now in terms of how it engages with itself. So, on that basis, the idea was a very welcome one. I posted on Twitter, there was a meme that I saw on the Matrix subreddit that said that the people who run the world now are so evil they put the devil out of business, referring to the Merovingian, because he was the devil.
Mhm.
It was blatantly shown in the third movie that he was the devil in Club Hell, right? Um, but the inclusion of the Merovingian and the exiles, that's when things kind of took a leap for me in
Yeah,
realizing
yeah.
what it was trying to say. And I really appreciated the message. And also too, I talked in our last discussion about how you do deal with debilitating grief. So on that basis, since the movie is basically being made as a response to a debilitating loss by the artist, and having gone through a similar loss myself, I was already really dialed into what it was trying to say, and what's wrong, really, at the end of the day, with the comfort that comes from seeing once dead fictional characters alive again. I took the intended comfort from that myself, and it was really cool to see how additional service was given to the Neo Trinity relationship. It evolved it in a way that feels different, but also really kind of makes sense considering the
Yeah.
trajectory that their story went on in the first three movies, particularly the first one, but also throughout all three of them. Because in a lot of ways, he only became the one because he was bestowed that right by her in the climaxing moment of the first movie. So it was appropriate to see how that leveled up and changed. Um, so really, at the end of the day, I thought that this movie did a really good job of focusing in on the story content, because as much as I do love the action scenes, the fight scenes and everything, these fight scenes do feel less focused, but that's never what really interested me in the Matrix. So if they're not going to be as glitzy as a Yen Wo Ping choreographed fight scene from one of the first three movies, that's not going to harm my perceptions of enjoyment in terms of watching this one.
And
This
it wasn't that intentional anyway. Somewhat to have everything a little sloppier and not as concise. It's sort of a reflection of where Neo is.
Well, also it reflects.
And that's a question, by the way. I'm just
no, no, I understand that, but I mean, I think that it also ties into the way that the Matrix itself has evolved, and what it feeds off of to subsist. You know, it is a dirtier, uglier place, and the fact that it is, and that you don't have these dances and fight scenes anymore in comparison with the first three. It changes the way that you perceive the threat, because in this movie, the Matrix does feel more dangerous and in kind of a vindictive way.
Sure, because
anybody feels when they scroll Twitter.
Because this architect self-proclaimingly, that's that word, actually understands the human mind and human emotions.
Yeah, he's such an asshole too. I mean,
God, he's great.
Like the architect was, at least you could like rely on the idea that he built that version of he built the first 6 versions of the Matrix primarily due to a machine's kind of understanding of what human consciousness is and what can keep people complacent to accomplish what it needs to do. And the analyst, as played by Neil Patrick Harris, is like the architect melded with a network TV executive and a social media executive, rolled all into a ball of vitriol and hate that you would expect from the Jack Zuckerbergs and Mark Dorseys of the world, right? I mean, it's just he's an antagonist for our time in a way that you could not have for the first 3, while also being a logical progression forward from what we saw from the architect, who also himself served a larger master. So yeah, I mean, I thought that this movie was really good. I was surprised to see how polarizing the reaction was at first, and then I thought more about it, and it's like, oh, I guess that kind of makes sense.
That's the Matrix sequels. I mean, really, if you think.
It's filmed today, right? I mean,
correct.
If the Matrix sequels existed in an era of Twitter, the reaction to them at that time would probably be even more vitriolic than it was back then. But the fact that you have this, and honestly, you have an ideological flag being driven into the ground because Lana Wachowski understandably wants to reclaim some of the verbiage that has been subverted by opposing political ideologies. And I thought she did a pretty solid job with that too. While also saying, this is about my grief and my ability to go to a place of comfort, and making clear to the audience they were going to make this without me anyway, so I might as well do it. And she was right. She was absolutely right.
Correct. Correct.
And I was so glad to see that like, I don't want to say trust, but like Warner Brothers being like, okay, like we're going to make a Matrix anyway, but hey, if you're going to do it, we're going to let you do it. We're let you do it. If not, we're going to let Michael B. Jordan do something.
Well, but it's not like Michael B. Jordan would have been fine. It was Zach Penn that was the problem. I mean, Zach Penn, Joss Whedon understandably has a lot of issues today, but even Joss Whedon, when he was talking about the first script that he saw for the Avengers before he rewrote it into what was the final form, said, oh, that script was terrible. And it was written by Zach Penn. Zach Penn also wrote X-Men: The Last Stand. And no, thank you. Don't touch the Matrix, please. And the fact that he didn't, I'm very pleased about.
Well, I just want to also give a big shout out to the 2 leads who rolled right back into those roles with the greatest of ease, and they were both so phenomenal. Keanu Reeves, it's funny because I'm older than you guys, right? And the reason I bring this up is because he was Ted. That's who he was.
Right.
And then he played Ted in Parenthood. And then he played Ted basically in Point Break for the most part. And then that was his career. And then he did Dracula, right? And then that was when, so he's a fucking joke all of a sudden.
Dude, I know that you're older than me, but really, he was Ted for me too.
No. Like I understand.
I love Bill and I loved all of the Bill and that's a podcast we should do.
I know. We are. I know. It has nothing to do with the fact that I know that your love for the franchise exists. I just mean I saw Bill and Ted in ninth grade in the theater, or summer before ninth grade. And I was a young rock and roll teenager in suburban America going, that's me and my friends in a phone booth. Right. So that's all I meant by that. And then, so let's see, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of his career because I don't have IMDb pulled up in front of me anyway, but just sort of anecdotally, just my own personal experiences. And then he was a joke as an actor. Then he did Speed. And okay, well, Speed's kind of like him just doing Ted. And then it was always this, he's just that guy. And then at some point in his career, maybe you guys can tell me the year with he tapped into this action star role that wasn't Ted, it was Smart. And I guess probably maybe it was The Matrix, really. I guess at the end of the day, it's what it had to be, right? I mean,
Johnny Mnemonic certainly pushed him in that direction too, although
Yeah.
that movie wasn't really nearly as well received.
And then John Wick was, when did that come out?
The first one was like 2015 or 16.
There you go. But I guess my overall point I'm
2014.
trying to make here is that he's a much more talented actor than some people give him credit for. And yeah, he has his limitations, obviously.
Yeah, but he's been able to have movies that really exploit his strengths as an actor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as a human being, he seems to be amazing. But I think, I mean, there was moments where he was he's talking to Neil Patrick Harris, his psychiatrist, and he's nervous and he's messing with his hands and his quirkiness and his uncomfortableness and his face. And I'm going, you know what? That's true. That's true acting there. He's tapping into something. He's feeling it. Like this guy's got more chops than it's funny that we have this discussion. He's one of those massive movie stars of all time, but as an actor, he's questionable to a lot of people, but I just loved him in this film. I did. I thought it was great. I was very surprised of how much I love this movie. And looking at some of the reactions, I'm like, man, maybe I love this more than I should. And again, I love the sequels. This is the best film since the original for me. It just is. It's very smart. Ryan, how do you feel about how Morpheus was handled? Where I guess I'm a little confused on this. I can't lie, but I guess it appears to be. I mean, I know the language is there and everything, but I'm just execution sometimes throws me off.
Yeah.
So I guess Morpheus is Morpheus, but he's also Agent Smith hybrid that Neo wrote the code for to represent sort of both, but he's more Morpheus than Agent
Basically.
Smith.
Yeah.
But then they have the projection of the computer generated people that now can immerse themselves and interact with the real world, and he's that guy also. How do you think that was handled? Do you think did Lawrence Fishburne just not want to do it, or was it just like all the other characters where they said, for this to work, we need to
it's an interesting question. I'm not sure exactly like the answer, but at face value, based off interviews and things, it seemed like Lawrence Fishburne wasn't asked to be in the film, and it seems like that's probably because Lana Wachowski had this idea to execute Morpheus in this way. I mean, Morpheus as Lawrence Fishburne does show up in the movie in terms of all this archival footage. So, and you see like a statue of him later on in the movie when they describe like what the hell happened in the intervening years.
I thought that was an interesting touch, by the way, with the statue. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it seems like it was an intentional thing with a story purpose she would want. I don't know, like if bringing Morpheus the character back, because they were pretty conservative on other characters that they brought back, beyond just Neo and Trinity.
Chris, what do you think? How was Morpheus handled? Because obviously the second, or in some ways, I mean, shit, if you think about it, just from a pop culture standpoint, Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne's face and the sunglasses and him holding the pills out is almost more iconic than Keanu Reeves himself, right? In some ways.
Yeah. I mean, it was a little difficult for me to wrap my head around it at first, but when I realized the time frame for this movie, it made a little bit more sense. Morpheus has always been a character.
Well, and if you don't mind, and hold that, Morpheus has always been a character. So I want to give you an opportunity to elaborate on that. But you talk about the time frame. I think this is an important point for us and our audience here, was because Trinity and Neo were preserved.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a sense.
Officially so. Mhm.
Right. And then the other characters, the devil, so to speak, was an exiled and sort of immortalized, if that's the right word, that way, right? So just your average quote human character wouldn't have been alive.
I mean,
Is that kind of what you're saying?
kind of. I mean, also too, the fact that that Morpheus ended up becoming leader of the human council that we saw and oversaw the transition from Zion to the new city. You know, they gave a lot of structural and foundational importance to Morpheus after the fact. So that made it a little bit easier to swallow. I mean, I just love Yahya Abdul-Mateen II anyway. So the fact that he was in the movie is always going to be a feather in the cap. But, you know, 60 years is a long time. They found a way to include Niobe, which was cool. I always liked Niobe. And for those of us who played the games, Niobe was an important character in those as well. But the way that they decided to include Morpheus without actually including the original character, I can see how it would rub some people the wrong way. But, you know, he's embodied by a really, really excellent performer.
Man.
Not that Lawrence Fishburne isn't, but Yahya.
Sure.
Yahya, you know, I mean, he's really poured himself into pretty much everything that we've seen him in. He was spectacular in Watchmen. He's really cool as Black Manta in the Aquaman movies, and that's just his franchise stuff. You know, he's made some really interesting choices, and this is one of them. But the inclusion of the essence of Morpheus gives that character potentially more grandeur in the larger scheme of things, because he continues to exist in a new way that is not bound by the physical constraints of a human being. We never saw Niobe really, you know, get into the grid of things anymore,
Right.
because conceivably she's moved on to a different aspect of her life, and certainly in a new leadership role. But what Morpheus represents is really important for Neo to understand and accept the truth once again about where he is and what he's doing. And really, even though kind of in terms of runtime, Neo's journey back to the truth was a little bit long and potentially a little bit arduous, it was an efficient way to get him there eventually. And I liked the inclusion of that. The change up that I have a little bit more of an issue with, not a huge one, but more of one than I have with Morpheus, is with Smith. That was a little bit harder for me to swallow, just because, I mean, I love Jonathan Groff. I think he's a world-class performer, but there's just something about the way that Hugo Weaving had always played him that made him such a gravitational villain, such an intense presence throughout the first three movies. And Groff, I think he made the right decision, given the job, not to just do a rehash of what we had seen before. I think that would have gone over a lot worse. But the domineering presence of the Smith that we know was missing, even though the character technically was present.
True. I felt that way the first time I saw it. On the second viewing, I mean, similar enough to just share that sentiment. But on the second viewing, I was a little bit of a change of heart, and I said, I think this is what it needed. Obviously, he had to be included, but do we want to rehash that whole dynamic between them? And what if now Smith in this new Matrix has a different objective, at least somewhat, and has different demeanor, different idiosyncrasies, different everything to make him, at the end of the day, different, right? So I want to see it again, because the Smith thing is a little bit, I'm stuck on that a little bit myself. I warmed up to it more the second viewing. Have you seen it?
I kept looking for some sort of resolution with him. He just kind of like falls out of the movie, and the movie kind of ends. I mean, it's a great ending. I love the ending, but I was just looking for like, oh yeah, where did some of these threads get dangled? And I just kind of wondered if like they're there on purpose because they maybe want to make a sequel or more, or if this really is just like a one-time footnote thing. I would assume Warner Brothers would want to make more Matrix movies, but maybe not after the box office performance. I don't know.
Well, hopefully they have the same keen observations that Chris had at the top of this, at least the second half of the show, at the top of our discussion about why that is. And who knows, because I would love to see this carry on, because it was a stellar sequel to me. I'm like, okay, this thing's wide open now.
Yeah, it felt like a super hat. Like, this shouldn't work. Like, bringing the characters back and reestablishing things, and the whole. And I love the commentary in the movie where, Neo was just like, well, what did anything that we did? Nothing mattered. Did anything matter? And then they show you like, yes, it mattered, but you can still move on from it. Like, and then that was like, I feel like that was a powerful message too, because then because it's almost a self commentary on like the first three movies. Like, did we change anything? Did we, it's really kind of trippy when you.
Well, and Smith says, but stories continue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's something about that. He's right. Yeah. It's just, we accept it in comics, we accept it in the written word, but sometimes, and then sometimes it is time to go. I mean, after 11 years of Cheers, it was time to go, right?
But I think one of the cooler themes that's present in the movie is the broader theme of acceptance, like of multicultural acceptance, and because I love the way that Bugs positioned, like, your sacrifice did mean something. It brought about peace, but more importantly, it brought about a new understanding between humanity and machines. And it's not just humans versus machines. Now we're all in this together, and we would never have gotten there if it wasn't for you and what you did to show us that there is a way through this. And a
lot of religious connotations there.
And just connotations of identity,
Sure.
Like, why do you hold on to the conflicts that persisted when you're shown a better way and a better path, right? You do it out of familiarity. You do it because you've always done it. Is that really worth keeping those kinds of conflicts ignited? No. And the movie makes a cast those off. You don't need them anymore, because when you do open your ranks up and you can accept new ideas, then you open yourselves up to new possibilities as well, and peaceful ones at that. So you see the machines that continue to persist and subsist off of the Matrix, and having to morph it into something that just feeds on all of the negative emotions, so much so that it amps up the power that the power plant is able to produce. And you have this civil war that the machines went through directly as a result of Neo's sacrifice. They are just stuck on that, the very almost literally the juice of negativity and of vitriol and of hate, because it keeps them going. And humanity, with new machine allies, found a better path forward, totally separate from that. And I think that says a lot too. And it was a message that certainly resonated with me.
Me as well. I loved it. So to kind of to wrap up this discussion here, and then I'm gonna give a couple of thoughts on Batman before we go. I like ranks. I like ranking. Anybody that knows me, it's a fault. Chris, are you a 1 through 10, 1 through 5 letter grade? What's the
reviews that I write, I tend to avoid rankings and
do.
assigning grades. If you're going to force me into a corner, then I'll go the letter grade system, I guess.
All right, Matrix
Resurrections.
No, Matrix. The Matrix.
Oh, Matrix 1. A.
Reload is the second one, right?
Yeah.
I always get that confused. I know the films, but Reload, Revolutions. Yeah. I guess Revolutions makes sense. Reload.
A+.
That's your favorite. That's right. I just had it. The third one. Thank you, Revolution. Man, it's funny with this franchise. Those things don't stick with me for some reason, and I should, because quite frankly, they make sense. Matrix, Reload, Revolutions, Resurrections. It all makes. I get tripped up on it. I'm sorry. So, the third Revolutions.
Initially, the first time I walked out of the theater, it was probably a B. Now I think it's a B+.
Resurrections.
A-.
So A.
A plus.
A plus, B plus, B minus. So it's
A
your
minus.
A minus. Okay, so it's your okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think
Haas.
that it doesn't quite hit the threshold of the first movie, but it is in
Sure.
very good company.
It's your third favorite.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Ryan Haas.
Yeah. So I wanted to have parity with my letterbox account. So I wanted to make sure that
Just so you know, Pete pulled that shit out for his
Did he
Spider-Man
really?
viewings. Yes.
Oh, let me get letterbox.
dick shears. I want some of your mashed taters when I come to Dallas.
Well, I was thinking I ranked it in my head, and I wanted to cross check it with my letterbox, and I was correct. So on letterbox, it goes by stars. You could go up to 5. So I had the original Matrix at 5 stars. I had Reloaded and Revolutions at 4, and then I put Resurrections at 4.5. And I did that with that. And when I put my 4.5 in for Resurrections, I did not go back and look at what I had put for the other ones. I just kind of did it blindly. So this is the first time I've noticed it. So yeah, I guess I've got Matrix and then 4 and then 2 and 3 like together.
All right.
So, similar to Chris.
First Matrix A plus, most recent Matrix A minus, second Matrix B plus, third Matrix B. There, I'm gonna die on that hill. All right. Great discussion. This is cool, man, because we when we launched this, when Ryan and I launched the satellite show, Matrix was a big hell. We were discussing this when we were kind of doing the satellite episodes of the BLF proper show, and I'm glad in a way that we waited to incorporate all this stuff, all these discussions into a 2
Get a whole new movie out of it.
Yeah, and we got a new movie out of it. It's been fascinating. Thanks so much, guys. I just want to close it with this. I love the movie. Don't worry about the reaction. Don't worry about box office. Just see it. If you don't like it, fine. But if you love the franchise, and if you don't like it the first time, see it again. I just say that because I love this movie. I mean, I love it. And I watch it. And, oftentimes when you love a movie and the fan base doesn't love it, and I'll bring up Last Jedi because, I mean, despite the fact that, critics and general audiences loved it, whatever, but Star Wars fans hated it. And I watched it going, how? What am I missing here? Paul Herman, what am I missing here? Right.
I can tell you exactly what he would say.
I know. I'm fully aware of what he would say, and there's nothing wrong with what he would say. It's his right. I'm just saying, but you know what I mean? Like, as a fan of something, you're like, am I watching a different movie than everybody else? It's so
no.
When I hear people not like Dark Knight Rises
or Dark Knight Rises.
Here's what it is. The core difference when it comes to those kinds of perceptions is always the way that you define whatever the property is or whatever the story is, the way that what you derive from it.
Right.
So what you derive from it is just different than what those other people derive from it.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm joking.
I mean, they're wrong, but
they're wrong. But I'm like, I'm watching this movie going, I fucking love this movie. All right, guys. So thanks for the discussion. Let's wrap this up with plugs, obviously. But just real quick, and Pete and I talked about this already, but the new Batman trailer. Chris, go.
I didn't know Paul Dano's voice could do that. But it's cool. And I like that it's already giving significantly more attention to the Bruce Wayne, Selena Kyle dynamic than we've certainly seen in any other movie, arguably even The Dark Knight Rises. So,
and I would even argue, as much as I love The Dark Knight Rises and not a big fan of Batman Returns, I think Batman Returns even dives into it more psychologically, me personally.
Yeah,
but
probably. I mean, whether or not it does it well is a whole other discussion.
Thank you.
But,
here, sir.
But
anyway, go ahead.
I was surprised.
Right, yeah.
It's very evocative of King in a way that I wasn't expecting, just in terms of their interpersonal dynamic. But
he is tweeting as such.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you see his tweets on that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I'll share one with you.
Yeah, please do.
He is actually. Did you see it, Ryan?
No.
He actually had a reaction on Twitter about the new trailer.
I mean, the bat and the cat, obviously that's a thing that goes back to
anyway, but go ahead.
Batman Returns. But it's cool to see, because who is Bruce Wayne's equal other than Selena Kyle, really, at the end of the day? Like, that's what That's what makes them such a natural fit for each other. But it also just seems threatening in a way that I would hope a year two Batman story to be. And it seems like it's going to try and play with a lot of preconceived notions that govern what we understand the history of Gotham to be and the history of the Waynes to be. And I hope that it's surprising, but it was definitely an awesome trailer.
It is. And just on the Tom King thing, going back 9 hours ago, the Batman handle, vengeance equals justice for both the bat and the cat, watching the trailer now. And then
Yeah.
so Tom King, I spy some. And then he just keeps retweeting all this stuff. He's so great. And
Yeah.
and then somebody tweets Batman window and rain. Why does that seem familiar? Tom King. And he quote tweets, I have a legacy.
Yeah.
Go to his Twitter feed, man. It's
Yeah, I
great.
just looked at him.
It's great. Look, man, I love Batman 89. I love the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't really at the end of the day hate a Batman movie. I hate what Burton did with the Penguin. I hate that he didn't really honor the universe that was presented. I hate that Joe Schumacher was more concerned about tapping into like 1966 sensibilities than he was advancing the character. I hate that he took Jim Carrey's popularity and decided to make that the centerpiece of a movie versus all the things he could have done with Bruce Wayne and might have done, release the Schumacher cut hashtag, I guess. But there's something about this film. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to resonate with me the same way that the first time I saw Batman Begins, because that in a lot of ways very literally changed my life. The Batman 89 and Batman Begins changed my life. Those two films did. The Dark Knight just reinforced why Batman Begins changed my life. Batman Returns made me question why Batman 89 changed my life. Kidding, kind of. But but with this movie at my age, and I don't know. I mean, I guess that's one of my favorite things about Batman. And people ask me sometimes, how at your age are you into this stuff? I'm like, Batman has grown up with me, or I've grown up with him, whatever. This movie is made for the 46-year-old me. I feel like there's some kind of Batman god that just keeps feeding me material in conjunction with the period I am in my own personal life. I just feel like this Batman and this film and this aesthetic and this attitude and this purpose is kind of where I'm at today for myself. And it's very self-serving, and I'm here for it. We'll see what happens when it's released, what the final product is, but I love everything I'm seeing. Ryan, any thoughts? I mean, I texted today, but
yeah, we texted. It was like, yeah, you got a hold of the trailer like before it was actually like released. That way it was released was weird.
I had a friend text it to me, said, dude, check this out. And it was like one person had viewed it at that moment, and it had to be him.
And I was like, why is this? I was like, what?
I thought it was a leak, or it was like a real trailer.
Yeah, but it was the real thing. And then I was like, why is this not trending on Twitter? Like, nobody's talking about this. And then it took a good 10 minutes before people were like, oh, here, yeah, there's a new trailer. And then it was really strange. But I was waiting for the inevitable Vimeo link from Matt Reeves. And so whenever the trailer comes out, Matt Reeves posts them on Vimeo, and you can watch them in 4K. So I put that sucker on 4K on my TV and got the bias lights on it with the hue lights, and boy, that thing looks so good.
It does. It really does.
The car, it's got a lot of great shots. At this point, I watched it and I was like, okay, I really don't want any more trailers. Like I don't need it. I didn't need it after the second. I didn't need anything after the first one, but the second one was great, and then this one is like, okay, I don't need any more. The thing that I got out of the second trailer, the one before this one, was that oh, there's a lot more Batman and Catwoman stuff than I thought. Like this movie's about them. And even when that trailer came out, some people are like, you think so? You think she's really gonna be in it that much? I'm like, yeah, I think this movie's about them. And so with the Empire magazine covers and stuff, and with this trailer, it's like, yeah, she's like number 2 in this movie. Like it's a huge thing. And even the tagline, vengeance for Bat and the Bat and the Cat, and their interaction, their lines in this trailer are so good. Like she calls him Vengeance, which I think is cool, because I think she's,
hey, Vengeance, go have some fun or go show up some trouble.
Just think about it. Like, is she standing in the background somewhere early on when somebody when during that line where he says, "I'm vengeance," and she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna use that against him." Hey, vengeance, like so that's cool. Like,
And that's
it's
real
gonna be
life, by the
really-
way. You know what I mean? That's what people
Yeah.
would do. They'd mock you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then he gets right back on her. Like, just to hear it could be like a weird Batman 66 thing if it's done wrong, but like Pattinson does a really great job. That's a lot of cats. Like just to hear him kind of break a little bit and do that. So it's cool to see that there will be some moments of like living.
It's cool. It's cool to hear his Bat speaking voice.
Yeah,
It may be
exactly.
it may be the best since Keaton or Batman Begins.
Quite possibly.
Opening of a can of worms. Anyway, I'm stoked for this film. So, Chris, you've been coming to Dallas quite a bit for work, I see. So, what's your excuse for not coming to the BOF watch party in March?
Did I say I wasn't?
Oh, wait.
I'm going to try to. Look, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I'm certainly going to try to.
Got it.
It's I just joined this company this past summer. I spent my first time in the office back on the 14th after we went to a Mavs game for our company Christmas party. And if I can swing it so that I'm there when the party is happening, you bet your ass I'll be there.
I used
to try.
I used to own a bar just right around the corner from where the Mavs play. Ryan was there with me.
That's true.
My staff fucked up his chicken fried steak. I was not happy with it. I was like,
You're like,
I was really embarrassed.
Moment. You're like,
I was like,
you're
really?
I'm embarrassed. It really is really.
That's like one of our best.
It's usually better. It's
I
usually
know,
better
like,
than this. I swear.
remember going to the kitchen. I'm gonna kill every one of you. My friend just flew in from where did you live? Then
this really isn't that good, is it? You'll have to be. It's so fun.
All right, guys. Let's wrap this up. Fun discussion. Thank you both, or thank you, Chris, because Ryan, whatever. Ryan, I can't thank you for being here. Can you thank me for being here? How does that work?
I don't know.
I'll just thank both of you for being here.
Well, Chris,
That's
you've been an integral part of BOF since. I mean, dude,
For both of us.
yeah, man. Bill, we all know, and you've joined me on. I'll speak very. You and I've done political podcasts together, and you're brilliant. You're versatile, my friend. We'll leave it there.
You.
You're versatile, very versatile.
I appreciate the kind words very much. I don't always agree with them, but thank you very much.
Well, it's a fact. Anyway, so plug something, please. What's going on with you?
Yeah, so Comic Binge, we're doing that pretty regularly on YouTube. Paul and I don't think we figured out exactly what the subject of our next story is going to be, but we have been threatening for a while to dive into the Run on Earth 2 by James Robinson and Tom Taylor that introduced the version of Superman that is likely going to be played by Michael B. Jordan in an HBO miniseries. Or series or movie. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I know that HBO Max is doing it, and he's a cool character, and those are cool stories. So we're going to dive into that, and you should check it out when we do. And then Discovery Debrief, my Star Trek podcast. We're about to do a recording here. The fourth season of Discovery is about to go on hiatus, so we're going to catch up with the season, what it's been up to, and what it means for future of that world, and that's always fun to dive into with my friends. And then other than that, I'm planning on posting a couple of reviews to my own personal website, just of movies I watched recently, including The Matrix Resurrections. I also recently watched No Time to Die for the first time, the
nice.
final Daniel Craig James Bond movie.
Yeah.
And that's a series that I've got a lot of affinity for. I have a very exhaustive ranking of those movies on my letterbox. If you wanted to take a look.
Hey, Brian, who's gonna helm? Hey, Chris, you want to guess? You want to just host some BOF satellite show Bond episodes? Do it. I mean, seriously, do it.
Fun. There's a lot to cover with the 26 movies, 25 movies.
Jesus Christ,
that's a lot. So, Rick, if you ever need to power through them, I'll give you my voodoo.
I have seen probably 10 Bond movies. I've seen at least. How many did Timothy Dalton do?
Two.
Still
need to see those.
Octopussy was one of them, right?
No.
No, that he did Living Daylights and License to Kill.
Octopussy was who? That was
Roger Moore.
That was Roger Moore. That's right.
Yeah.
And he did how many?
6. He did a
Okay,
lot.
6. Okay, that's the Octopussy. I saw that. That's growing up multiple times on HBO. Like
8.
What?
8. Octo. That was a
Yeah,
joke.
yeah.
No, I mean,
do you want water or salt water because you're an octopus? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating franchise. Like if you ever
Yeah,
it is.
if you
It
ever
is.
decided to dive into it from the beginning, like the Connery movies just hit very. I actually think Timothy Dalton is really underrated as James Bond, and Daniel Craig actually I think owes quite a lot to Timothy Dalton and the way that he plays him. But fascinating series, especially in the full scope. And then
Sure.
Sean Connery came back and did an unofficial one that was bad, but it was weird that he went toe to toe in the box office.
Wasn't
with
the
Roger
same
Moore and
the year or the same time as another one? Yeah.
yeah, it was. I can't remember which one it came out against, but it was basically just a remake of why can't I think of his fourth one, the water one with number 2. And why can't I think of the title? It's really embarrassing.
Could you do an hour and a half show on just the franchise? Sort of just not diving into each specific film.
Thunderball.
Thank you.
Necessarily, but just because that's a fascinating topic because I'm so just barely quasi familiar with the franchise. I love the ones I love, but even like Octopus, I'm like Octopus is cool. Which Bond was that again? Oh yeah, Dalton. That's right. And then I was never really a fan of the Pierce Brosnan stuff, but I love the first 3 of the.
He started off so strong in GoldenEye. He started off really, really strong, and then his last one is one of my absolutely least favorite.
Yeah, it just was so fluffy and watered down, but cool. All right, Ryan. So let's what can you and I plug?
Oh,
I already plugged you in and Lauer's Toy Story episode again. I really genuinely loved it.
Yeah, it was fun. It's like you can follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. You can we talked about Letterboxd here. I'm also on Letterboxd at SMB_Ryan. It's pretty fun hanging out there. You also follow the Super Mario Brothers Movie Archive on Twitter at SMB Movie and SMBmovie.com. There is some new Blu-ray review stuff coming hopefully really soon because we've got like a new Blu-ray got released in Australia, but it's actually it will work in United States region players. So, and it's got the work print on it. It's got all kinds of great stuff. So I'm gonna hopefully have a review up for that like really soon.
I tell you
4K
what,
Blu-ray is region free. I almost got the Dawn of the Dead 4K release that's only in the UK. Still thinking about that.
The Super Mario Brothers film thing I thought was such a shtick. I was like, that's so cute. He likes that movie. And then also I was like, no, there's a cult following. There's things like it won't go away, and it's not just you. I'm looking around going, okay, touche. I'm. It is like I would almost call it your Office Space. But it's not even that because your devotion to that film. It's cool to like Office Space. It's still not really cool to like that movie, and yet you're like, "Fuck you!" It'll be cool in 20 years.
But
you guys comes back around.
This man, for anybody who is a part of the community that really adores that movie, they owe a lot to Ryan.
They do.
Yeah.
That community would not exist in its current form at all without Ryan.
And Chris, you know what that's done to me too? It may be skewed. I'm like, is Ryan Haas's dedication and devotion to the Super Mario Brothers film? And it's like interest and success. The last couple of years, I had no idea was coming. Do we need to owe Pete Verra is he responsible for Keaton returning? This whole team yellow rolls or something behind that too. I'm just gonna stop underestimating people.
Do not underestimate the ambition and the capability of anybody at BOF.
And on that note, don't underestimate. I'm gonna tell a quick story that I've never told on a BOF podcast. So give me 30 seconds and we're gonna close the show. So I grew up with this person. Will not name his name. He was a disaster. He was a wonderful person, just a shit show, partier, delinquent. Whatever. And so he was a year behind me, years after we both had graduated high school, even if he did. I'm not even sure if he did. Anyway, we're playing volleyball and it's late 90s. And he said, I go, what are you up to, man? At the time he was like managing your grocery store. And I thought, man, this is so great that you have a job. And he said, I'm going to bottle pickle juice. And I was like, you're going to bottle pickle juice. Why don't you just fuck off and let's just play volleyball? And please just don't bore me with your stupidity anymore. And we trolled him and whatever. And many years later, I ran into a mutual friend. Really hard not to say these people's names. He goes, hey, man, my mutual friend said, you're not going to believe who I just ran into. It was, Ralph. I said, what's Ralph up to, man? Is he still playing volleyball and managing the Piggly Wiggly, whatever the grocery store actual name is? I won't name it. He said, you haven't heard? I said, heard what? He said, dude, he's a multimillionaire. I was like, what? What do you mean? Well, his pickle juice, because pickle juice, this is real. He tapped into the Tour de France cyclist market where pickle juice actually has something that breaks down. I don't know. I'm going to speak out of line here, but it does something with your bones and muscles when you're cycling and exercising. Breaks down enzymes. Hell, I don't know the science behind it, but he built a multi-million-dollar company on pickle juice because of the cycling world, and then he sold it. He's a multi-millionaire. I saw him about a year ago. Jen and I, my wife, ran into him, and he had his fiance with him. we had a restaurant bar, and we were talking and hugging and catching up. It was so great to see him. And I just looked at him and I said, by the way, I just want to say touche. Touche, dude. Touche. Anyway, moral, that's right. That's a true story. I made up a couple of I replaced some names with some other names or what have you, but that is a true story. So do not underestimate pickle juice. Do not underestimate Team Yellow Oval, and do not underestimate Ryan Haas and Super Mario Brothers the movie. We'll close the show there. You guys ever seen pickle juice bottled in restaurants, or not restaurants, but
No.
Anyway,
By itself? No.
Not something I've sought out personally, but
Google pickle juice and like cycling and muscles when it does. It's crazy. Anyway, we grew up together. All right. So getting out of here. Thank you guys for watching this or listening to this episode. I say watch, we're on Zoom. This is just audio only. Episode 8. Ryan, what's next for BO Satellite Show? You guys gonna do the next Toy Story stuff or what?
Oh gosh, I don't know what's actually really next. Because we did Spider-Man and Matrix in one big old giant episode. So
Well, you have more
22
Toy Story
will be-
stuff, I know, lined up.
oh yes, that'll be a thing. Maybe a
Okay.
Bond show. Man, I don't know. Daniel Craig run is over. That could be maybe an S.
Yeah, Superman, Chris Clow. Everybody can see that. Well, listen, this is the last episode for BO Satellite Show. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for supporting us. Hopefully we all get through this pandemic. You guys are great. This whole subculture of podcast and geek culture is something that's very important to me and Ryan and Chris, and it matters. It really does, because things that we're passionate about, it's cathartic. It helps us get through the day. And it's not just that. This stuff is really, truly, it's remarkable. And when people wonder why we're into Batman or Spider-Man or Star Wars or whatever, is because it matters. It uplifts us. It defines us. It's a part of our childhood that sort of just manifests these things that make us adults. And then all this material, like I said earlier, just grows with us, or we grow with it, whatever. It doesn't matter. But thanks for being part of this crazy world with us. Rick Shew here, Batman on Film Satellite Show. Announcer Rachel will take us out. Happy New Year.
You've been listening to the Batman on Film Satellite Show, BOF's non-Batman pop culture podcast. Follow the show on Twitter @BOF Show. Follow BOF on Twitter @The Batman on Film. For all of Team BOF, I'm Announcer Rachel. Authoritative, definitive, the original Batman on Film, established in 1998.